Dad. You feel better?
Yeah.
This is the story of a truly happy family.
Here's me. Can you see me?
My mom always filmed every occasion.
Pumpkin carving at the Weedy household.
Living in blissful harmony.
He's gonna get you.
But behind closed doors,
To me, something didn't seem right there.
a terrible darkness lurks.
This is before destruction hits.
Violence is unleashed. That spares no one.
I know I dropped to my knees. I started screaming.
It's August 1st, 1987, in the tiny rural city of Early, Iowa.
Early was just a really happy little community to me. Everyone knew everyone. A very close-knit, comfortable community to start a family in and raise your children.
Every kid in town's shown up for a very special t-ball game. Celebrating Mona Weedy's son Dustin's 6th birthday.
Hit it, Dustin. Run. Dustin, go back to first base. You're gonna be out.
Dustin always loved to have friends, guests, family around. He had so much fun.
He's 6 years old.
Everybody was laughing, smiling, enjoying themselves.
Robot! Robot!
Mona met Dustin's dad, Brett Weedy, back in 1979 while working at a construction site in Afton, Iowa.
He arrived, and I immediately had an attraction to this man. And his job was driving the Bobcat. I always called him my Bobcat baby. He was always smiling and full of jokes. About a year of us being together, we married on March 14th, 1981.
The smitten couple moved to Sleepy Early, knowing it'll be the perfect place to build a happy home.
Honestly, I was ready to start a family. It was just a long, many years of a dream to grow up and be a mommy.
And it's not long before Mona's dream comes true.
I found out I was pregnant. I was beyond excited. I was just ecstatic that I was gonna have a baby. It was like a dream come true.
9 months later, Mona and Brett welcome son Dustin into the world.
I just oohed and gooed all over this little guy, and as he was growing and learning, it was just complete joy. You know, I was 100% content.
Mona and Brett are completely won over by parenthood. And in 1987, they have another baby.
I got a little girl. So I was real excited. Family was growing, and it was like my dream.
Hey, the movie star.
She was really just a happy, bouncing, giggly little girl.
As the years go by, Mom Mona records every milestone on her camcorder.
My mom always filmed every occasion. It wouldn't even be a special occasion, and she'd have the camera out.
Are you getting your work done, Dustin? Are you getting your work done? You don't know how to talk, do you?
Get out of here. I'm trying to do my homework.
To me, it was just such a special time and a special memory and, you know, like a keepsake.
What are you doing? Huh? Holding your baby? Is he being good?
4-year-old Ashley is about to swap her doll for the real thing. Because in April of 1990, she and Dustin are filmed by Dad Brett on their way to meet their brand new baby sister.
Leave it to my husband, Brett. He gets out a piece of wood and a can of spray paint and paints. It's a girl. I'm like, that's not very pretty. But it was just so cute that he did it.
Did you paint it?
Yeah,
What color?
Chevrolet orange on white.
It's supposed to be pink.
I didn't have no pink paint.
I got pink paint.
You gotta be careful. She's just a bit of baby.
Dustin and Ashley seem a bit shy around their new sister, but Mona's mom, Ruth, shows them how it's done.
They were both really, really careful and gentle with her.
Look here, Ashley. Look at her little feeties. Look at her feet just stuck out.
I just remember sitting there smiling with joy, seeing my whole family. Just, it was really special.
Hi, Vienna. Wow, what's Daddy doing to me? I can't see her all.
With the addition of Brianna, it's official. Mona and Brett are outnumbered.
Daddy doing to me?
At times, the parents struggled to keep up.
Now that we were a family of 5, it was much busier.
Particularly now, Mona's decided on a new career in real estate.
What, Dustin?
Listen to me sing. Happy birthday.
But they work hard to rise to the challenge.
You just don't realize how much more is involved.
Happy birthday.
But it was full and fun and it was nice.
And no holiday goes forgotten.
What are we gonna do, guys?
Hey,
Mom went all out for Halloween. It's probably one of her top holidays.
Do you want to cut our faces out? Turn the faces around.
My dad would always carve our pumpkins for us as kids. We'd draw out elaborate, faces and pictures, and they would literally spend hours carving out pumpkins for us.
Although Dad Brett's exhaustion is plain to see.
Dad always looks so thrilled about everything we do.
Daddy, are you funny?
There you go. Reach in there, grab some more.
First it was like, ooh and goo, cleaning out the pumpkin.
Fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
We had pumpkins and pumpkin guts all over the place.
You go over there.
Pumpkin carving at the Weedy household.
While it's far from easy, the Wheaties seem to have built their version of the perfect family.
Get out of my clothes.
This is Brianna in here picking on her daddy and his clothes. Aren't ya? Aren't ya? Do you know what no means?
You remember in the time in your life and the chaos and the craziness,
Daddy gonna get you?
you kind of go, everything's nuts around here. But I really feel
Can't see quite.
it was all really good.
Can you pick me up there?
In 1998, 17 years after the Weedy family settled in Early,
Ashley.
they welcome some new neighbors, Tracy and Michael Roberts.
Shortly after arriving in early, the Roberts reached out to me, and they wanted me to be their realtor.
Tracy and Michael have come from Chicago, bringing along their 7-year-old son Bert and baby Noah.
We just started getting to know each other better, personally myself and the Roberts.
The two families hit it off.
Tracy was always kind. She was, considerate. She just was always pleasant, nice to me. I mean, I started feeling like I was growing a friendship with the family.
It's not long before Tracy starts to open up to Mona about life before early.
After a few different occasions and visits down to the house, Tracy mentioned her ex-husband.
Tracy tells Mona that her son Bert is from a previous marriage to a plastic surgeon named Dr. John Pittman. They divorced 2 years ago, and she soon met Michael, getting married just 18 days later.
I just thought they looked like the cutest little loving couple ever. They seemed very happy. I just really thought they had a really special connection.
A devout, born-again Christian, Michael also has his own IT training company, and he sets up shop in Early.
Michael wanted to help the community and grow the community. He just had really high expectations, and I was just like, they're just really nice, fun people.
But while Mona is making new friends, 17-year-old Dustin is struggling to do the same.
Are you picking on him?
No.
No.
No, I'm not picking you though.
He pretty much just started hanging out down in the basement in the family room down there. And a lot of times he'd be down there by himself.
Dustin retreats from the world, escaping to his video games.
He just felt unacceptable, and I'm sure he felt like nobody liked him. He looked at me one day and he goes, "Mom, what's wrong with me?" And I looked at him and I'm like, "Dustin, there's nothing wrong with you." And he just smiled, just gave me that smile.
He might be putting on a brave face for Mom, but Dustin is being ruthlessly bullied at school.
I think he was just more quiet and alone, and that made him an easy target. Each year as his education went on, I would say he started getting a little bit more outcast, and once one person realized we're picking on him, then another one picked up on it, and pretty soon a whole group that just really pushed Dustin away.
Mona seeks expert help for Dustin.
We made multiple trips back and forth to different doctors, trying to get a psychological answer, something.
But it doesn't provide the answers Mona is looking for.
Every single doctor I went to put a new diagnosis on him.
Despite his loneliness, Dustin perseveres and graduates in May of 2000.
Thomas, Dustin, Brett, Weedy.
And while Brett and Mona are thrilled,
Well, Dustin was at the end of the group with the last name Weedy. We were proud parents.
Dustin can't wait to leave school behind.
Here comes Dad. Do you feel better?
Yeah. Let it all hang out.
Hi, Ashley. I'm Dustin. Brianna. Hi. Hi. Here's me. Can you see me?
By the summer of 2000, The weedy kids are all grown up.
This will be unbelievable. But look at that background.
And taking a road trip with Brett and Mona.
We went out to Colorado to a family wedding. And while we were in Colorado, we did a lot of other exploring.
Look up there, honey. You're gonna be above the clouds. You gotta go up a mile yet.
We would stop at every mile marker and take pictures because it was pretty exciting to just go all the way up to the top.
Smile.
But Dustin almost didn't make it.
Dustin initially chose not to go with us. We're like, what? Come on, you gotta go, come on. You don't wanna stay home all by yourself. And no, I'm staying home. I'm like, okay. 3 to 5 miles down the road, and Dustin called. He goes, Mom, I changed my mind.
All right, Dustin.
Hi, Mom.
The vacation lifts Dustin's spirits. But Mona knows her son better than anyone, and he's not okay.
Broke off the top.
I was worried that Dustin was struggling. I could get that smile, but I just felt the smile was a cover-up over all of his inner pain that he really just kept to himself.
They talk fast. They talk fast. They can't.
By Christmas of that year, nothing much has changed for Dustin. But the rest of the family is in a festive mood as they gather at Grandma Ruth's down in Creston, Iowa.
We would always pile into her living room, and there was probably like 20 or 30 of us with all the aunts, uncles, cousins, and everything. So it was really a tight, crowded space.
Amongst the merry chaos, Dustin is subdued.
Everybody would be so busy that Dustin didn't really, interact a whole bunch. He'd just kind of hang around and watch people.
Here we are, Christmas 2000 at Grandma Ruth's. This is before destruction hits.
By 2001, Dustin's growing detachment is causing his family concern. To add to their worries, he's also recently lost his job at the local ethanol plant. Unexpectedly, a helping hand comes from family friend and neighbor, Michael Roberts, who's just employed Mona at his IT company.
I was just sharing that Dustin had lost his job with Michael. And Michael goes, I could probably take Dustin under my wing and mentor him a little bit and, see if I could just get him involved in some activities and try to get him off in a right direction.
Michael arranges a paintballing trip for the two of them.
Dustin just lit up. He just was like ecstatic. We had never done that. He was all fired up, ready to go. And they went off and did it. Dustin gets back home and he goes, Mom, call Michael. When are we going paintballing again?
Mona is grateful to Michael for his help, but it means even more when Dad Brett also reaches out.
Dustin and Brett's relationship wasn't really tight-knit. Life didn't keep them going in the same direction together as father and son.
Despite going their different ways, Brett still loves his son more than anything, and that summer sets out on a new project he thinks will get Dustin's attention.
Brett just thought, I want to try figure eight racing. Brett got this car set up, just an old beater car.
Brett's car don't look too bad right now. We'll see what it looks like in a little bit. He's over at a driver's meeting. He's 64.
father and son may have grown apart, but they will always share a love of cars.
My dad and my brother were really close when they were working on cars. They'd spend a lot of time fixing things up.
There we go.
Brett's plan seems to be working, as proud Dustin cheers his dad on from the sidelines.
Go, Brett! He looks pretty special out there in the lead, don't he?
Dustin is there to help when things don't go quite to plan.
Dad come off the track and Dustin was right over there. What happened? What's going on? What do you got to fix? What do you got to do?
Hey, Brett, what place were you in until you lost? What place were you in until you lost or had to leave?
That was a really special bonding moment for them.
Just as one bond is renewed, another is close to breaking point.
Tracy invited me to come down, and she started explaining to me that she was a little upset with Michael. Tracy proceeded to say, I love Michael, but...
And she's soon dragged even further into the Roberts problems.
I was doing a couple marketing calls. Tracy comes flying through the back door, screaming. She's yelling at Michael. Michael just looked at me and he says, Mona, I'm gonna have to ask you to excuse yourself. And I just got up and left the home. Shortly after the incident, Michael paid me to no longer come back to work. And to me, something didn't seem right there.
As the end of 2001 approaches, the Wheaties see less and less of the Roberts family. And by December 13th, as Mona shops for Christmas gifts, the clouds around Dustin seem to be lifting.
Dustin had an orthodontic appointment at 1 o'clock that day. I called home and Brianna answered the phone and I asked her if Dustin had got up yet. And she goes, yeah, he's up. His keys are gone. I'm like, wow, he's on the ball this morning, up, showered, and gone. I'm shopping and struggling, and my phone rings, and it's my nephew, Brandon. And he goes, Mona, something really, really bad happened at your friend's house, your neighbor's. And I go, Michael and Tracy's house? He goes, yeah. He goes, there was a fatality. At that exact moment, I thought Michael had shot Tracy or Tracy had shot Michael.
7 p.m. on December 13th, 2001. A 911 call comes into Sac County Sheriff's Office.
911 emergency. Help this. I can't really hear you. Yeah? Okay. We're, my mom, somebody came in the house, and they tied her up, and they were choking her. My mom got to the gun and shot the other one ran off. Okay, I'm gonna get the police right away. Okay.
The caller is 11-year-old Bert, Tracy's oldest son. Within minutes, the first deputy arrives to find a visibly distraught Tracy on the front porch.
Tracy just kept saying, he's upstairs, and motioning towards the second story. The deputy made his way up the stairs. When he approached the Roberts' bedroom, he observed a young man laying face down in a pool of blood.
News of the shooting at the Roberts house spreads like wildfire through the quiet community of Early.
Brett comes flying through the door and he goes, is Dustin at home? And I go, I don't know. And Brett goes, I think Dustin's car is down at the Roberts. We jumped in the vehicle. We drove down to the Roberts.
That's Dustin's car.
I looked at him and I said, "Is my son here?" And they said yes. I said, "Is he dead?" And they said yes. I know I dropped to my knees. I started screaming. I want to see my son. I want to hold my son.
Police confirm the deceased is Dustin Weedy. He's been shot 9 times.
We were just so confused about how it happened and how that could happen. You know, we're like, we know these people. How did he die?
A traumatized Tracy does her best to explain to detectives what happened.
Tracy tells law enforcement that her husband Michael is on a business trip in Minneapolis and was on his way home. She was giving her young infant daughter a bath. She heard who she believed to be her husband coming up the stairs. She went to greet him, observed it was 2 individuals who she didn't recognize.
Fearing for her life, she ran down the hall towards her son's room.
At that moment, she is accosted by these 2 individuals.
She says that one grabbed her by the hair.
The detective had noticed that she had a bruise or a marking across her neck, what appeared to be a ligature mark.
Investigators recover a pair of pantyhose from the kitchen floor.
Tracy told the detective that the pantyhose were used to strangle her or asphyxiate her.
She says she briefly blacked out.
She wakes up and hears the 2 of them speaking, and then makes her way into her bedroom to the gun safe that's on the right-hand side of the bed.
Alerted by Tracy's movement, the 2 attackers come at her once more.
One of the 2 intruders is pulling at her and grabbing at her. She was able to access the safe. She takes the pistol and pulls the trigger and continually fires off round after round after round.
Her attacker fell in a heap while the other fled down the stairs.
But when she goes to leave the bedroom, the person she had shot was getting up off the floor.
And when her attacker fails to heed her warnings, she's forced to fire again. That's when Bert called 911.
It's a nightmare. It's horrifying to think that could happen to anyone, you know, let alone in early Iowa.
Tracy is told that the man she shot is Dustin Weedy.
Tracy tells the detective that earlier that day that Dustin had stopped by the home asking if he could hang out with Michael. He just kind of stood on the porch, was, you know, acting weird, and that she tried to shoo him away, but that he just wouldn't go away.
Hoping to assist investigators, Tracy gives a description of the second assailant.
Tracy described the second intruder as being 5'11" to 6 feet, dark brown or black hair, and older than Dustin, say approximately in his mid to late 30s.
As a manhunt for the missing intruder begins, technicians comb Dustin's car for further clues.
In the front passenger seat, they find a pink spiral notebook, a journal written by Dustin Weedy. The journal more or less outlined a murder for hire plot where Dustin was hired to follow, stalk, harass, and ultimately kill Tracy.
An entry names the mastermind as Dr. John Pittman, Tracy's ex-husband. investigators arranged to have Dr. Pittman questioned in Virginia.
When law enforcement made contact with Dr. Pittman and told him what had happened, he was genuinely shocked.
He does know the Weedy family.
Dr. Pittman says he knows Dustin's sisters, or one of his sisters, because that sister had been a babysitter for Bert on one occasion.
But police can find no connection at all to Dustin, and his alibi is watertight. He was working at a hospital in Virginia the day of the shooting. Dr. Pittman is ruled out of having any involvement. There seems to be no clear answer as to why Dustin wrote the apparent plot in the journal.
Mona discloses that Dustin did have a significant behavioral health history.
But he has no history of violence at all. With the notebook a dead end, police focus on the remaining evidence and continue their search for the second intruder. Tracy's story becomes a media sensation.
There's this person who's still out there, and as a mother, I have a natural instinct to want to protect my children.
And soon gets picked up by the Montel Williams Show.
Just been recently that I've come to terms with things because someone did lose their life.
Michael supports his wife in the studio.
I know because I was there that that was the only thing I could do. And I have to keep telling myself that I did what I had to do to protect my family.
But Brett and Mona grapple with the pain of losing their only son and refuse to believe that he was a threat to anyone.
Having Dustin painted as an intruder, a robber, an attempted murderer, nothing made any sense. Brett would come home and we would just sit there and talk about it every night, over and over and over. We couldn't get it out of our head. We were completely consumed.
On Thanksgiving Day 2002, 11 months after losing Dustin, tragedy strikes the Weedies once more.
The phone rang. It was the funeral director. And he says, "So you know I have Brett." I go, "Why do you have Brett?" And he said, "Brett took his life."
Destroyed by the death of his beloved son, Brett Weedy has committed suicide on Dustin's grave.
Just
The case languishes for years.
It just went cold. They could not find a second person.
It was just years of questions and wondering and not knowing.
And Dustin Weedy continues to carry the blame.
Brett wasn't there with me, by my side. I gave up. The fight was over. Honestly, I convinced myself that I didn't have a son. He was not murdered. I have no pain. I don't hurt.
The Weedies aren't the only family pushed to the breaking point. In April 2004, Michael files for divorce from Tracy. Law enforcement also has lingering questions.
Investigators were never satisfied with Tracy's version of events. And at every stage of her story, every time she told it, she was shoring up all the cracks and all the pieces of the story that didn't make sense.
Nine years later, in 2010, Ben Smith, the newly elected Sac County attorney, decides to take a fresh look at this case.
The lack of answers, the lack of information in the case file is what motivated me. Why does this kid have 9 shots in his body? Why does this kid have 3 bullets in the back of his head?
Prosecutor Smith is unconvinced by Tracy's account of a panic showdown, crouched by the gun safe.
She was firing with expert accuracy, which, under the conditions, is just implausible.
The nature of the bullet wounds to Dustin's head also raised questions.
Dustin suffered what were referred to as sword wounds, meaning that his head had to be already on the floor when the shots were fired. In every single version of Tracy's stories, he was a credible, real threat to her life and to her children. Proving that Dustin's head was on the floor when she fired the final shots demonstrated, beyond any doubt, that he was not trying to get up.
Prosecutor Smith grows increasingly sure that Tracy's claim of self-defense is bogus.
With every unanswered question, 3 more would pop up.
Prosecutor Smith calls several witnesses back in to go over their evidence. One of them is Mary Higgins, one of Tracy's close friends.
Immediately, Mary was guarded. I told her that we do have new additional evidence that, is pointing towards Tracy. And Mary's response was, "You mean that stupid notebook?" I became very lightheaded. I pushed my body kind of leaned up against the wall, because as far as I was concerned, this was the end game. Never once did anybody ever disclose the existence of that notebook.
Totally unaware of the significance of the notebook, Mary now does all she can to help investigators. She explains that it was Tracy who mentioned its existence, and her ex-husband, Dr. John Pittman.
Tracy told Mary that Dr. Pittman was going to be arrested, that the investigators found in Dustin's car a pink notebook that would connect Dr. Pittman to the shooting. Nobody should have known about it other than Dustin.
Tracy's knowledge of the notebook leads Prosecutor Smith to a new scenario.
Tracy was embroiled in a bitter custody battle at the time that Dustin was shot. She concocted this plot to try to put Dr. Pittman in check, and it's no more complicated than that. Dustin had no idea. He was just a pawn in this scheme. He saw the Roberts as friends. He went over to that house because Tracy told him to come over to the house. When he gets over to the house, somehow she gets him to be her scribe and enter contents in this notebook.
Then she turns on Dustin.
She pulled a gun out of nowhere and put it in his face and started shooting. The last thing he ever saw was a friend that gunned him down. Tracy executed Dustin in every sense of the word. Executed him.
Tracy plants the notebook in Dustin's car for the police to find, before faking her own strangulation by rubbing pantyhose up and down her neck to cause a red mark.
I showed that photograph of her in her hospital bed to a medical examiner who said it would be impossible for her to have ever lost consciousness.
The marks are in the wrong place to have blocked her airway.
If she never lost consciousness, then the attacker never existed.
On July 27, 2011, Tracy, now known as Tracy Richter following her divorce from Michael, is charged with first-degree murder. At the trial, Mary Higgins takes the stand.
Did the defendant say how she knew there was a pink spiral notebook?
She told me that the police told her that it was there.
Did she say anything about the pink spiral notebook would prove anything?
It would prove that John Pittman did this.
That's what she said.
That's what she told me.
Mary Higgins' testimony against Tracy was all we needed.
The jury came back into the room, and I remember my nerves racing, just praying for the outcome that we wanted, that she wasn't going to get to be the hero any longer.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Tracy Ann Richter, guilty of the crime of murder in the first degree.
Tracy is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Tracy's ex-husband Michael had no involvement in the shooting and faced no charges.
How could she do that? That's a sick, psychotic, messed up, evil mind and human being.
Now people know. Now the world knows. The world knows that Dustin didn't do those things. And so it is justice, but it doesn't ever bring him back.
Today, Mona and her daughters still take it all one day at a time, step by step.
All through his whole life, he was my everything.
Dustin.
I say Dustin is my angel fireball. I don't feel he went away. I believe he will always be present.
You know, he was just always there for us. He would help us, make us laugh. So he was just a good big brother. He was just always around, being good, being caring, and loving.
Smile.
It just took a lot more than just my brother. It's hard to have joy in life when there's people missing out of it.
Human beings are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you could ever imagine. It is a matter of perspective, really. You look at the American dream, that picture perfect life, and you assume everything is fine. You think the white picket fence keeps the demons out. But the demons, they're already inside. They are sitting at the dinner table with you. They are tucking your children in at night. In the case of Rob and Lisa Wedby, the nightmare did not start in the dark of night. It started with a diagnosis, a struggle, and the slow rot of a marriage that should have been built on steel, but was instead made of paper. My, you have to be kidding me. It was September 1989, and the world was supposed to be bright. The Wedby family were the quintessential couple, the Ken and Barbie of their circle. They had it all, but then came the medical misfortune. Their daughter Brittany was born on March 7th, 1990, and she was not the perfect child they expected. She had Down syndrome. She had a hole in her heart. She was a burden to some, but to a decent man like Rob, she was a child who needed love. To Lisa, she was a source of misery. And misery, I tell you, is a dangerous thing. It makes people do things they never thought they would do. Lisa started spending time at the church, seeking solace, or so she said. She found a friend, a music teacher named Michael Frazier. And just like that, the rot spread. The marriage turned into a farce. By June 7th, 1994, everything seemed normal on the surface. There was fried chicken on the table, but the poison was already in the well. At 1 a.m. on June 8th, 1994, Rob woke up to the smell of cigarette smoke in a house where nobody smoked. He saw a man in a stocking mask, a man with a knife. The fight was on. It was personal. It was intimate. It was meant to be fatal. Rob realized during the struggle that this was not some random intruder. This was Michael Frazier, the organist, the friend of the family, the man who was supposed to be a pillar of the community. Rob managed to survive by the grace of God and his own strength. When the police arrived, the story was a mess of contradictions. Lisa was the one who could not keep her lies straight. She claimed she did not know anything, yet she was in the room, watching her husband fight for his life. She eventually broke down, telling the truth in that cold room. "We did everything in this house," she said. Everything. That was the moment the dream died. It was all about money. It was about a $1,500,000 life insurance policy. Greed is a powerful motivator. It can make a mother forget her own children. It can make a wife pick up a knife against her husband. Frazier got 4 years for his trouble. Lisa, she got an even better deal, a single year in jail, a bargain price for her soul. Rob was left with his children and a lifetime of questions. Why could she not just leave? Why did she have to try to kill him? I do not know. People are funny that way. They would rather destroy than let go. And that, in the end, is the true tragedy. Humans are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons imaginable. Greed is a parasite. It eats the soul before it eats the body. Jean Schwarzkopf was a woman who lived for the stage. With her red hair and her Thunderbird car, she was always ready for an audience. It was September 1993 in Greenwich Village, New York. Her life was a parade of parties, family, and glamour. But beneath the surface, the water was dark. There were sharks circling in Florida. And Jean, bless her heart, was vulnerable. She was 74 years old, a widow twice over, and she still had a sparkle in her eye. She found a new man, Tommy, and like many stories of late-life romance, it went sideways. Money, it always comes down to money, $100,000. She signed it over thinking she was building a future, but she was just building a trap. By 1995, she had the sense to file for divorce. But the sharks were not done. Then there was Sergio and his brother Octavio. My, you have to be kidding me. You think you can play a woman like that for a fool and walk away? September 1997. The family is in Cape Cod for a wedding. 200 people celebrating life, while Jean is being taken from us in a brutal, heartless way. When I look at a crime scene, I look for the door. Was it forced? No, it was immaculate. She opened that door. She let him in. That is the tragedy. She trusted the wrong person. The scene was a mess of jewelry boxes, ransacked, empty, and the flowers. Why the flowers? Cruelty. Pure unadulterated cruelty. Detective Jim Sessa did not fail. He knew. He followed the trail of breadcrumbs from Tommy to the brother to the hitman. They traveled interstate, thinking that would save them. They thought the law stops at the state line. It does not. The Federal Bureau of Investigation got involved because they moved stolen property across state lines. Frankie Gugliotti got 5 years of conspiracy, but that was not enough. Murder. That is the charge that sticks. They went back to trial in Florida. First-degree murder. Life sentences. It does not bring Jean back. It does not fill the seat at the dinner table. But it brings justice. And in this business, justice is all we have to offer. I tell you, it is a sad state of affairs when a grandmother, a woman who only wanted to be loved and to enjoy the fruits of a long life, becomes nothing more than a mark for some bottom feeders. They took her jewelry. They took her life. But they did not take her legacy. Her family remembers her not for how she died, but for how she lived. She was a woman of style, a woman of substance. And the people who did this to her, they will spend the rest of their miserable lives in a cage. That is the only place for people like that. It is cold, it is dark, and it is exactly what they deserve. You look at a case like this, and you have to wonder about the nature of man. What is it that drives someone to look at a 74-year-old woman and see only profit? It is a sickness, and we are the doctors who have to cut it out. My. Life is a delicate thing. It is a shame it is so easily broken by those who have no respect for it. Human beings are strange creatures. I tell you, they kill for the most ridiculous reasons you could ever imagine. My. You think you know people, but you do not know them at all. You see, the worst monsters do not live under your bed. They live right next door, or they sleep in the same bed as you. This is a story of a man named Brandon Duran. He was like a rock star, a snowboarder, a guy who loved life, and he had a weakness. A woman, Amber Andrews. She was like a drug to him. You see, love is a dangerous thing when it is paired with the wrong kind of person. It started with what looked like undying love, but it ended in venomous hate. They had a child together, a beautiful boy named Brando. But motherhood is a tough transition for some, and Amber wanted a party. The relationship soured. They broke up. They got back together. It was a cycle of misery. Brandon thought he could fix it. He thought he could have a family. You have to be kidding me. You cannot fix someone who does not want to be fixed. In the year 2012, Amber convinced Brandon to go to Oklahoma. She played him. She told him they were going to reconcile, that they could be a family. But the truth was far darker. She and her lover, Justin Hammer, had a plan. They did not just want him dead. They wanted him erased. I have seen many things in my career, but this takes the cake. A shopping list. Not for groceries. For murder. Bleach, saws, buckets, concrete. A premeditated act of pure evil. They shot him. They cut him into 25 pieces. They put him in a cage in a pond. They thought they were smart. They thought they were invisible. But the truth always has a way of rising to the surface. Just like that cage. When we finally put the pieces together, we found out the truth. She was the mastermind. The Black Widow. She wrote the list. She lured him there. Justin was just a hand that pulled the trigger, but she was the heart of the darkness. Brandon was a father, a son, a brother. He just wanted to be a dad. He wanted to give his son a life. And in the end, that is what they stole from him. Justice was served. Life without parole. Both of them. Behind bars where they belong. It is sad. It is always sad. Because at the end of the day, a little boy is left without his father, all because someone else wanted control. Human nature is a terrifying thing, I tell you. You look at these people, and you have to ask yourself, how does someone become this cold? How do you look at someone you claim to love, someone who is a father of your child, and decide that they are nothing more than a problem to be disposed of? It is beyond my comprehension. I have spent my life looking into the eyes of killers, and most of them have one thing in common. They do not value life. They value themselves, their desires, their twisted agendas. Amber Andrews was a woman who lived in a web of her own lies, spinning and twisting until she caught the one person who trusted her the most. It is the ultimate betrayal. You see, the investigation did not stop with Justin Hammer. We knew there was more. We saw the handwriting on that list. It was neat, calculated, feminine. It was not the work of a man who shoots first and thinks later. It was the work of a planner. Someone who sat down and thought about how to destroy a human being piece by piece. And when we dug deeper, when we looked at the phone records, the timeline, the lies she told her friends, the picture became clear. She was not a victim of circumstance. She was the architect of a tragedy. She stood there in court, and she never once looked back. She never said a word. Why would she? She had already made her choice long before that day. And for what? Custody? Control? It is a heavy price to pay. And in the end, it gained her nothing but a cell and a lifetime of silence. I have seen the home movies. I have seen the joy in that family before the poison seeped in. It makes it all the more tragic. A little boy looking at the pink in the sunset, thinking it is his daddy. That is the reality of murder. It does not end with the death. It ripples out, destroying everything in its path, generation after generation. It is a scar that never fully heals. And that is the problem with these people. They do not think about the ripples. They only think about the splash. But the law does not care about your excuses. The law cares about the truth. And the truth found its way to Amber Andrews and Justin Hammer. They will have plenty of time to think about what they did. A lifetime, in fact, and that is exactly where they belong. Human beings are the strangest creatures on this planet. They will build a house of cards and act surprised when a gust of wind blows it down. And I tell you, I have seen it all, and yet it still manages to turn my stomach. My. You see, love is a dangerous thing when you mix it with the wrong kind of person. Someone who thrives on chaos and cannot handle the weight of their own existence. It was 1996 in Mandeville, Louisiana. A beautiful girl named Julie Meringue was celebrating her sweet 16. She was the kind of person who radiated light, a model, a good soul, someone who genuinely cared about others. And then there was George Dargis. They had known each other since grade school, intertwined lives. Families that were so close they were essentially one. But George, he was different. He had a streak, a darker edge that manifested early and never really went away. You have to be kidding me. I thought when I looked at the history of this man. He was in and out of the legal system, hooked on narcotics, a man who could not keep his own life together, let alone sustain a marriage. Julie, with that big, compassionate heart of hers, she tried. She played the part of the savior, thinking she could fix him, thinking she could love the poison out of his veins. But it is a noble sentiment that is often a fatal one. Over the years, the cracks widened. The relapse in 2004, the marriage in 2014, an inevitable spiral downward. George could not hold a job. He could not keep a clean slate. And he certainly could not let go of the control he felt he deserved. Julie finally reached her limit in 2017. She realized that you cannot save a man who is determined to sink, so she told him it was over. That was the moment, the final straw, when a man like George loses control. When he realizes the person holding his life together is walking away, he does not just let go, he lashes out. It is a pathetic display of weakness masquerading as rage. On that Saturday in December 2017, the order of the world was shattered. George went back to the house, and he did the unthinkable. He destroyed the only person who had ever truly tried to help him. When I arrived on a scene like that, you have to suppress the human in you. You have to be a machine. The evidence was everywhere, a struggle in every room, a desperate, valiant fight for life that was ultimately stolen. He left a trail of chaos, a string of burglaries, trying to outrun his own shadow, but the law always catches up. He thought he was playing the victim when they brought him in. He had the nerve to claim it was an accident, that things just fell into place. But I tell you, I have heard every lie in the book, and that is one of the most transparent ones I have ever encountered. He butchered his own life, and he butchered hers. In 2019, he finally stopped the charade and pleaded guilty. He was sentenced to life, a small consolation for a family that is forever broken. Julie Meringue did not deserve the fate that was forced upon her. She was a woman who offered a hand, and in return, she was pulled into the abyss. It is a tragedy of the highest order, and it serves as a cold, hard reminder that sometimes you have to save yourself, even if it means walking away from everyone else. People are strange creatures. I tell you, they spend their entire lives building something beautiful, only to have it torn down by someone who claims to love them. It is the oldest story in the book. A girl next door, a seemingly eligible stranger, and a promise of a future that never stands a chance. My, you have to be kidding me if you think love is enough to save someone from a monster. In October 2015, in Montrose, Michigan, we see the beginning of the end. Mary Hinkle is preparing for her wedding, a day meant for joy, but shadows are already gathering. Her best friend, Melissa Thornton, known as Missy, is there to help. She is 24 years old, the youngest of three, and she treats her role as maid of honor with the seriousness of a veteran. She is the girl who lights up her room, the baby of the Thornton family, born in August of 1991. She had big brown eyes and a heart that was just too big for this world. When she met Robert Propp in July of 2010, it was at a backyard party. A simple barbecue, sunshine, kids playing. That is how the predator gets you. He was a guy next door, a father, seemingly stable, supposedly a family man going through a divorce. Missy was instantly attracted to him. She saw a future. She saw stability. She saw a guy who could fix cars and fix lives, but what she really saw was a mask. Within 2 weeks, they were dating. It was exciting. It was fast. But age gaps and speed usually hide a multitude of sins. By the summer of 2012, they were living together. That is, when the rot starts to set in. You see, when a man decides he needs to control a woman, he does not do it with a shout. He does it with silence, with absence, with excuses about work and long hours at a shop. By 2013, the cracks were not just showing, they were yawning wide. Missy gets pregnant with her daughter, B, and instead of stepping up, Robert steps away. He starts disappearing for days at a time. The man who supposedly loved her enough to propose was nothing more than a drug-addled shell of a person, snorting cocaine off his dashboard while children were nearby. My. Think about that. You are supposed to be a protector, and you are acting like a ghost in your own home. By March of 2016, Missy had finally seen the truth. She was done. She took her daughter and moved out. She wanted a life, not a cage. She started nursing school. She started living again. July 5th, 2016, was supposed to be a fun night out with her sister. A girls' night. Freedom. But Robert Propp was not going to let go that easily. When a man like that realizes his property is walking away, he does not wish her well. He tracks her down. He follows her. He invades her space. And then, at 10:15 in the morning on July 6th, the call comes in. The erratic, desperate call of a man who thinks he can trick the law. He claimed he found her door forced open. He claimed he found her unresponsive. He claimed he tried to perform chest compressions. But when Officer Jordan Engelhart walked into that room, the truth was written on the body of that poor girl. She was cold. She was stiff. She had been dead for hours. And the man who was supposedly trying to save her was the same man who had been the last to see her alive. I tell you, you have to be kidding me with the forced entry story. We found that the door was not broken in by an intruder. It was a stage. It was a play. And Robert Propp was a terrible actor. He had a black eye, which he blamed on a bar fight that never happened. He had marks on his arms that told a different story. He was a man fighting a losing battle against his own lies. The autopsy report confirmed what I already knew in my gut. Neck compression. Strangulation. She was killed in her own bed, the place where she should have been safest. During the trial, he had the audacity to lie again, to smear her reputation, to claim she wanted it. It is disgusting. But the jury saw through him. They saw the obsessed, controlling man who could not stand to see her succeed. 2018, and he was found guilty of first-degree murder. Life without parole. He is a monster, and he will spend the rest of his pathetic existence behind bars, where he cannot hurt another soul. Missy was a mother, a daughter, a sister, and a friend. She was everything that Robert Propp could never be, and that is why he killed her. Because he could not have her, and he could not be her. It is a tragedy, plain and simple, but at least in the cold, hard reality of the law, the truth prevailed. This is the story of a girl next door who caught the eye of an eligible stranger. She was instantly attracted to him and fell madly in love. But as their family grew, a dark secret threatened to break them. In October 2015, in Montrose, Michigan, bride-to-be Mary Hinkle was feeling jittery on her wedding day. But her best friend, maid of honor, Melissa Missy Thornton, was there to ensure everything went off without a hitch. Missy was the youngest of 3 daughters in the close-knit Thornton family, and her bond with Mary, forged in high school, was as strong as the one she shared with her sisters, Angie and Stephanie. At 19, Missy moved to Saginaw to be closer to her sisters and began a career in home health care, where she was known for her nurturing nature. Her life seemed complete when she met Robert Propp in 2010. After a backyard barbecue, Missy and Robert hit it off, and she was drawn to his perceived maturity and stability. They eventually moved in together across the street from her sister Stephanie, and in January 2014, they welcomed their daughter, B. However, behind closed doors, the relationship was crumbling. Robert spent his time at his auto body shop, was often absent, and grew increasingly controlling and insecure as Missy pursued nursing school. The situation reached a breaking point during Christmas 2015, when Missy's family discovered Robert was using cocaine, despite his promises to change. Missy finally ended the relationship in March 2016 and moved out with B. By July 2016, Missy was thriving as a single mother, finally feeling happy and free. On the night of July 5th, she went out for drinks with her sister Angie. Robert, who had been stalking her, followed them to the bars and eventually to Angie's home. Tragically, on the morning of July 6, 2016, Robert called 911, claiming he had found Missy unresponsive in her bed after forcing his way into her home. When police arrived, they found Missy deceased and Robert acting suspiciously with fresh bruising on his face. While he claimed he had sustained the injury in a bar fight, surveillance footage proved he was lying. An autopsy soon revealed that Missy had died from manual strangulation. Robert Propp was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. During his 2018 trial, he attempted to claim the death was an accident during rough sex, a narrative that was quickly dismantled by the prosecution and the testimonies of Missy's former partners. The jury found Robert Propp guilty of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Though he remains behind bars, Missy's family continues to mourn a vibrant, loving mother, daughter, and sister whose future was stolen from her. The story of Melissa Missy Thornton began in Montrose, Michigan, where she grew up as a beloved youngest of three sisters. Outgoing and vibrant, Missy was known as the baby of the family, sharing a bond with her older sisters, Angie and Stephanie, and an inseparable, lifelong friendship with her best friend, Mary. As an adult, Missy moved to Saginaw, following in her family's footsteps to work in healthcare, eventually finding joy and purpose in her role as a mother to her daughter, B. In July 2010, Missy's life took a fateful turn when she met her neighbor, Robert Propp, at a backyard barbecue. Despite an age gap and early concerns from those closest to her, Missy was drawn to his apparent maturity and the stability she believed he could provide. The two eventually moved in together and welcomed their daughter, B, in 2014. However, the veneer of a perfect blended family began to crack. As Missy pursued nursing school and tried to build a better life for herself and her daughter, Propp's behavior grew increasingly volatile. He became controlling, often absent from their home, and Missy eventually discovered he was struggling with a severe cocaine addiction. By March 2016, after enduring broken promises and mounting pressure, Missy finally found courage to leave Propp, moving into her sister Angie's home to start a new, independent life. She was happier than she had been in years, embracing her freedom and focusing on her future. However, Propp was unable to accept her independence. On the night of July 5th, 2016, after Missy and Angie enjoyed a night out, Propp tracked them down at a bar and followed them back to Angie's house. The following morning, July 6th, Propp called 911, claiming he had arrived at Missy's home to find the back door forced open and her unresponsive on the bed. When police arrived, they found signs of a struggle in the bedroom and a staged break-in. Although Propp claimed he had sustained a black eye in an unrelated bar fight that same night, surveillance footage from the bar proved he was lying. An autopsy soon confirmed that Missy had died from manual strangulation. During his 2018 trial, Propp attempted to shift the blame by making degrading claims about Missy, but the prosecution successfully argued that he had murdered her out of jealousy and a desperate need to reclaim control. The jury rejected his testimony, finding him guilty of first-degree murder. Robert Propp was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, leaving behind a heartbroken family who continues to cherish the memory of the beautiful, vibrant woman he took from them. Melissa Missy Thornton, born on August 29, 1991, was the youngest of three sisters in a close-knit, loving family from Montrose, Michigan. Known for her big brown eyes and outgoing personality, She grew up in an environment filled with support. As a young woman, she found her calling in healthcare, mirroring the compassion of her mother and sisters, and became a devoted, nurturing mother to her daughter, B. In July 2010, Missy met Robert Propp, a neighbor who had recently moved in with his parents following a divorce. Attracted by his apparent maturity and the fact that he was a father, Missy began a relationship with him that soon turned serious. By 2012, they moved in together. To those on the outside, they appear to be a blended family, but behind closed doors, cracks were forming. Robert became increasingly controlling, frequently absent, and, unknown to Missy at the time, struggling with a cocaine addiction. When Missy attempted to better her life by enrolling in nursing school, Robert's insecurity and possessiveness only intensified. The turning point came during the 2015 holiday season, when Missy discovered Robert's drug use. Realizing the danger he posed to her and her daughter, Missy finally found the courage to leave him in March 2016. Moving into her sister Angie's home, Missy began to reclaim her independence and happiness. On the evening of July 5, 2016, seeking a night of normalcy and fun, Missy and Angie went out together. During the night, Robert encountered them and eventually followed them home. The next morning, on July 6, the Saginaw Police Department received a 911 call from Robert. He claimed to have found the back door of Missy's home forced open and discovered her unresponsive on her bed. When authorities arrived, the scene told a different story. The room showed signs of violent struggle, and Robert himself bore fresh bruises, which he falsely attributed to a fight at a bar. Surveillance footage from the night before proved his story to be a lie, as there had been no altercations. An autopsy soon confirmed that Missy had died from manual strangulation, a homicide. At his trial in 2018, Robert Propp attempted to save himself by cruelly smearing Missy's reputation with fabricated claims about her personal life. The prosecution dismantled his lies, presenting a clear picture of a man who killed because he could no longer control the woman who had dared to build a future without him. The jury found Robert Propp guilty of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Though justice was served, the loss of Melissa Thornton remains a profound tragedy for her family. She is remembered not for the way she died, but for the light, kindness, and love she brought to everyone who knew her. Melissa Thornton, known affectionately by her family and friends as Missy, grew up in a close-knit family in Montrose, Michigan, as the youngest of 3 sisters. She was a vibrant, outgoing young woman who shared a deep, lifelong bond with her best friend, Mary. After moving to Saginaw to be closer to her sisters, Missy began working in home health care and eventually became a mother to a daughter named B. Her relationship with Robert Propp began in July 2010 after he moved in next door to her sister. Although there was an age gap and initial concerns from her family, Missy was drawn to his perceived maturity and stability. However, the relationship began to deteriorate as they moved in together. Propp became increasingly neglectful, spending excessive time at his auto business and struggling with a secret drug addiction. The tension reached a breaking point during the 2015 holiday season when Missy discovered Propp using cocaine, despite his empty promises to change. Missy eventually gathered the courage to leave him in March 2016, moving in with her sister Angie to start a new life for herself and her daughter. On July 5th, 2016, Missy went out for a night of relaxation with her sister. While out, they encountered Propp, who eventually followed them back to the house. Though they socialized briefly, Missy later left with Propp, and it would be the last time anyone saw her alive. The following morning, Propp contacted 911, claiming he had arrived at Missy's home to find the back door forced open and her unresponsive on the bed. When police arrived, they found signs of a violent struggle, including a broken lamp. Propp displayed fresh injuries, including a black eye, which he falsely attributed to a bar fight. Investigators quickly dismantled his lies after reviewing surveillance footage from the bars the pair had visited, which showed no such altercation. An autopsy ultimately confirmed that Missy had died of strangulation. At his trial in February 2018, Prop attempted a defense that suggested Missy's death was a result of consensual sexual activity, a claim that was strongly rejected by her family and refuted by testimonies from her former partners. The prosecution successfully argued that Prop had murdered Missy in a fit of jealousy and rage, attempting to stage a break-in afterward to cover his tracks. The jury found Robert Prop guilty of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Missy is remembered as a devoted mother and a loving sister who was on the verge of a bright, independent future when her life was stolen by a man who refused to let her go. The story of Melissa "Missy" Thornton is a heartbreaking narrative of a vibrant, young woman whose life was cut short by a controlling and abusive partner. Born in 1991, Missy was a cherished youngest daughter of the Thornton family. Known for her big brown eyes, nurturing nature, and close bond with her mother and two sisters, Angie and Stephanie, she found her calling in healthcare, working in home care and eventually pursuing a nursing degree to provide a better future for her young daughter, Bea. In July 2010, Missy's life intersected with Robert Prop, a neighbor who was older and recently divorced. Initially, Missy was drawn to what she perceived as his maturity and stability as a father. However, as they built a life together, eventually moving across the street from her sister, the cracks in the relationship began to widen. Prop became increasingly distant, often neglecting his family responsibilities to spend excessive time at his auto paint shop. By 2015, the facade of a happy family life crumbled when Missy discovered that Prop had been struggling with a severe cocaine addiction for over a year, despite his empty promises to seek counseling and change. His behavior became increasingly erratic and controlling. In March 2016, Missy reached her breaking point and left Prop, moving into her sister Angie's home to protect herself and Bea. She began to blossom as an independent single mother, finally finding the freedom and happiness she had been missing. On the night of July 5, 2016, while enjoying a night out, Missy and her sister encountered Prop. Despite the separation, Prop followed them home, and later that night, he left with Missy. The following morning, on July 6, Prop called 911, claiming he had arrived at Missy's home to check on her, only to find the back door forced open and her unresponsive on her bed. When police arrived, they were immediately suspicious. They found clear signs of a struggle in the bedroom, including a broken lamp, and observed that Prop had fresh bruises and a black eye. While Prop attempted to deflect blame by claiming he had been in a bar fight, a lie quickly debunked. By surveillance footage, the truth was revealed by the forensic autopsy. Missy had been strangled to death. During his 2018 trial, Prop attempted to evade justice by offering a humiliating and false defense, claiming the death occurred during a consensual sexual encounter, a fabrication that was soundly rejected by the court and contradicted by those who knew Missy best. Prosecutors successfully argued that Prop killed Missy in a jealous rage, unable to handle the fact that she had reclaimed her independence and was moving forward without him. The jury found Robert Prop guilty of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. While Prop's attempt to appeal the conviction in 2020 was denied, the irreparable damage he caused remains. He took away a devoted mother, a loving daughter, and a cherished sister, leaving behind a family who continues to mourn her loss every day. The story of Melissa "Missy" Thornton is a tragic account of a vibrant young woman who, after seeking independence from a controlling and volatile partner, was senselessly taken from her family. A devoted mother, sister, and best friend, Missy grew up in Montrose, Michigan, as the youngest of 3 daughters, sharing an inseparable bond with her sisters, Angie and Stephanie, and her lifelong best friend, Mary. Known for her outgoing nature and nurturing spirit, Missy eventually moved to Saginaw to be closer to her family and began a career in home health care. In 2010, at a backyard barbecue, Missy met Robert Prop, a neighbor who had recently gone through a divorce. Initially, Missy was attracted to his perceived maturity and his role as a father, viewing him as a partner with whom she could build a stable future. They eventually moved in together and had a daughter, B, in 2014. However, the relationship soon began to fracture as Missy pursued nursing school and tried to build a better life for her family. Robert became increasingly distant, controlling, and erratic, eventually revealing a hidden struggle with cocaine addiction. Despite his promises to change, his behavior worsened, leading Missy to finally leave him in March 2016 and move in with her sister, Angie, to start over. On the night of July 5, 2016, Missy went out for drinks with her sister, Angie, hoping to enjoy a carefree night. During the evening, Robert appeared and joined them, and later followed the sisters back to Angie's house. The following morning, on July 6th, the Saginaw Police Department received a frantic 911 call from Robert, who claimed he had discovered Missy unresponsive in her bed after forcing his way into her locked home with a crowbar. When officers arrived, they found Missy deceased and Robert present at the scene, displaying fresh injuries, including a black eye. While Robert claimed he had received a black eye in a bar fight, detectives reviewed surveillance footage from the bar the two had visited, which proved his story was a lie. The autopsy soon confirmed that Missy had been murdered by manual strangulation, and police concluded that Robert had attacked her in her home before staging a break-in to cover his tracks. At his 2018 trial, Robert attempted offensive defense, claiming the death was accidental during consensual sexual activity, a narrative that was quickly dismantled by the prosecution and character testimony from Missy's friends. The jury found Robert Propp guilty of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Though justice was served, the loss remains an immense, permanent void for Missy's family, especially for her daughter, B, who lost the loving presence of her mother. This is the story of a young woman named Melissa Missy Thornton, whose life was tragically cut short by a man she once loved. Missy was a bright, outgoing woman from Montrose, Michigan, known for her devotion to her family, particularly her two older sisters, Angie and Stephanie, and her lifelong best friend, Mary. Her life seemed to be on a promising path. She was a nurturing mother to her daughter, B, a dedicated home health care worker, and a nursing student striving to build a secure future. In 2010, Missy began a relationship with Robert Propp, a neighbor who initially seemed like a stable, mature father figure. However, as the years passed, the cracks in their relationship became impossible to ignore. After they moved in together, Missy began to discover that Robert was struggling with drug addiction. His behavior grew increasingly erratic, controlling, and neglectful, especially after the birth of their daughter. By early 2016, Missy had finally reached her breaking point. She chose to leave Robert, seeking safety and a fresh start by moving in with her sister, Angie. Tragically, Robert could not accept her independence. On the night of July 5, 2016, after a chance encounter at a bar, Robert followed Missy and her sister home. The following morning, on July 6, Robert called 911, claiming he had arrived at Missy's home to find it broken into and discovered her unresponsive in her bed. He attempted to stage the scene as a break-in, even using a crowbar to force the back door, but the investigation quickly pointed to him as the prime suspect. Evidence, including fresh bruises on Robert's body that contradicted his story about a bar fight, and autopsy results confirming that Missy died of strangulation, led to his arrest. During his trial in 2018, Robert attempted to shame Missy by claiming her death was a result of consensual sexual practice, a desperate defense that was soundly refuted by those who knew her. The jury saw through his lies, finding him guilty of first-degree murder. Robert Propp was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. While the verdict provided a measure of justice, it could not fill the void left by the loss of a devoted mother, a cherished sister, and a loyal friend. Missy's family continues to honor her memory, holding tight to the love she gave them and the vibrant life she led before it was stolen by a man who could not handle her strength. The story of Melissa Missy Thornton is a heartbreaking narrative of a vibrant young woman whose life was stolen by a partner who could not handle her independence. A devoted mother, sister, and best friend, Missy was a baby of the Thornton family in Montrose, Michigan, known for her outgoing personality and her close bond with her best friend, Mary. In 2010, Missy met Robert Propp, a neighbor and father who initially presented himself as a mature, stable partner. However, behind the facade of a happy blended family, the relationship was marred by Robert's growing control, instability, and secret drug addiction. As the years passed and the couple welcomed their daughter, B, the cracks in their relationship deepened. Robert's frequent absences and erratic behavior culminated in Missy discovering his drug use, leading her to eventually end the relationship in March 2016. She sought a fresh start, moving in with her sister, Angie, and embracing her life as a single working mother. Tragically, Robert could not accept this new reality. On the night of July 5th, 2016, after encountering Missy and her sister at a bar, Robert followed them home. The following morning, he placed a 911 call, staging a scene and claiming he found Missy unresponsive after forcing his way into her home. Investigators immediately suspected foul play due to the signs of a struggle in the bedroom and fresh injuries on Robert. Although he attempted to cover his tracks by fabricating a story about a bar fight to explain his physical appearance, surveillance footage proved he was lying. An autopsy revealed that Missy had been murdered by manual strangulation. During his 2018 trial, Robert attempted a final, offensive tactic by claiming the death was an accident during consensual sexual activity, a defense the jury soundly rejected after hearing testimony about his history of stalking and controlling behavior. Robert Propp was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. While Missy's family continues to mourn the loss of a beloved daughter and mother, they found some measure of peace knowing that her killer would never be free to hurt anyone again. This is the story of Melissa Missy Thornton, a vibrant young woman whose life was tragically cut short by her former partner, Robert Propp. Born in 1991, Missy was the youngest of 3 sisters and grew up in a close-knit family in Montrose, Michigan. She was known for being outgoing, nurturing, and deeply devoted to her best friend, Mary, and her own daughter, B. In July 2010, Missy met Robert Propp, a neighbor who had recently gone through a divorce. Although there was an age gap, Missy was drawn to his perceived maturity and his role as a father. They eventually moved in together and welcomed their daughter, B, in 2014. However, the relationship soon began to fracture. As Robert's business grew, he became increasingly distant and controlling. The situation worsened when Missy discovered that Robert was struggling with a secret drug addiction. Despite his promises to change, his behavior remained erratic, and in March 2016, Missy finally left him, moving in with her sister, Angie, to build a safer, happier future for herself and her daughter. On the night of July 5th, 2016, Missy and her sister went out for a night of dancing. Robert arrived at the bar later that evening, and though Missy attempted to keep the peace, he followed them home later that night. On the morning of July 6th, the Saginaw Police Department received an erratic 911 call from Robert. He claimed that after being unable to reach Missy, he had gone to her home and found the back door forced open, discovering her unresponsive on her bed. When police arrived, they found signs of a struggle in the bedroom, including a broken lamp. Robert had fresh bruising, including a black eye, which he dishonestly claimed was the result of a bar fight. However, surveillance footage from the bar contradicted his story. An autopsy later revealed that Missy had died from neck compression, strangulation, making her death a clear homicide. At his trial in 2018, Robert Propp pleaded not guilty and attempted to deflect blame by claiming that Missy's death occurred during consensual rough sex, a defense that was soundly refuted by her family and former partners. Prosecutors successfully argued that Robert had murdered Missy after his attempts to control her failed. The jury found Robert Propp guilty of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. While a conviction brought some measure of justice, Missy's family remains deeply heartbroken, remembering her as a beloved daughter, sister, and mother who was robbed of a bright future. The story of Melissa Missy Thornton is a tragic account of a vibrant young woman whose life was stolen by a partner who could not handle her independence. Missy was a beloved daughter, a devoted sister, and a nurturing mother to her daughter, B. In 2010, she met Robert Propp, an older neighbor, and while the relationship initially seemed to promise stability, it soon became marred by Robert's struggles with substance abuse, controlling behavior, and emotional manipulation. As Missy worked toward a future as a nurse and sought to build a better life for herself and B, the relationship inevitably fractured. In March 2016, Missy finally found the courage to leave Robert, moving in with her sister Angie to start anew. Her newfound freedom, however, incited Robert's obsession. On the night of July 5, 2016, after a chance encounter at a local bar, Robert followed Missy home. The next morning, he placed a 911 call claiming he had discovered her dead after a forced entry into her home. Investigators quickly saw through his web of lies. Surveillance footage disproved his alibi regarding a bar fight that supposedly caused his injuries, and physical evidence at the scene, along with a clear history of domestic instability, pointed to his guilt. During his 2018 trial, Robert attempted to deflect blame by invoking a disturbing defense, claiming Missy's death occurred during consensual sexual activity, a claim rejected by those who knew her character best. The jury ultimately found Robert Propp guilty of first-degree murder, sentencing him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. While justice was served, the loss remains profound, leaving a family to mourn a mother, sister, and friend whose future was violently cut short by a man unable to respect her choice to leave. The story of Melissa Missy Thornton is a tragic account of a vibrant young woman whose life was stolen by an abusive partner, a devoted daughter, sister, and best friend. Missy was known for her nurturing nature and her deep love for her daughter, B. Her life became inextricably linked with Robert Propp, a man she met in 2010 when he moved in next door. Although Missy initially saw stability and a future with him, the relationship eventually became defined by Robert's controlling behavior, his struggles with drug addiction, and his refusal to support Missy's goals, including her pursuit of nursing school. By early 2016, after discovering Robert's continued drug use and feeling the weight of his volatile behavior, Missy courageously chose to end the relationship and moved out with her daughter to live with her sister, Angie. She began to embrace her independence and found happiness in her new path. However, on the night of July 5, 2016, during a night out, Missy encountered Robert. After returning to her home, she was tragically murdered. On the morning of July 6, Robert Propp contacted 911, claiming to have found her unresponsive after discovering signs of a forced entry at her home. The investigation quickly unraveled his story. Police discovered that Robert's claim of being involved in a bar fight, offered as an explanation for a fresh black eye, was entirely fabricated, as surveillance footage from the bar showed no such altercation. Forensic evidence soon confirmed that Missy had died of strangulation, and investigators found clear signs of a struggle within her home, suggesting the break-in had been staged to conceal his crime. At his 2018 trial, Robert attempted to shift the blame by making disrespectful and false claims about the nature of their relationship, but the jury saw through his lies. He was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. While his conviction brought a measure of justice, Missy's family remains forever heartbroken, mourning the loss of a mother, sister, and friend whose future was cut short by a man who could not accept her freedom. The story of Melissa Missy Thornton is a heartbreaking account of a vibrant young woman whose life was stolen by a controlling partner. Missy, a beloved sister, daughter, and mother, first met Robert Propp in 2010. Initially drawn to his perceived maturity and stability, she hoped to build a happy future with him, especially after the birth of their daughter, B. However, beneath the surface of their life together, cracks began to form. Robert became increasingly controlling, absent, and addicted to drugs, leaving Missy to shoulder the burdens of work, school, and motherhood alone. Realizing that the relationship was no longer sustainable, Missy showed immense courage by ending things in March 2016 and moving in with her sister, Angie, to start a new, independent life. She was finally finding her joy again, embracing her role as a single working mother. However, Robert could not accept her independence. On the night of July 5, 2016, after encountering Missy at a bar, Robert followed her home, where he ultimately took her life. The next morning, Robert attempted to cover up his crime by staging a break-in and calling 911, feigning shock and grief. He even invented a story about getting a black eye in a bar fight to explain his injuries, a lie that was quickly debunked by police after reviewing surveillance footage. An autopsy confirmed that Missy had been murdered by strangulation during his 2018 trial. Robert attempted to further dishonor Missy by claiming her death was a result of consensual sexual activity, a malicious defense that was soundly rejected by the court after testimony from those who knew her true character. Ultimately, justice was served when Robert Propp was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, while his conviction and the denial of his subsequent appeals brought a measure of legal closure. The emotional void left by Missy's absence remains. She is remembered by her family as a three musketeer, a devoted mother-to-be, and a woman who was just beginning to realize her own potential when her life was tragically cut short. This is a tragic story of Melissa Missy Thornton, a vibrant young woman whose life was stolen by an act of domestic violence. Known to her family as the baby of the Thornton sisters and a devoted mother to her daughter, B, Missy was a kind and nurturing soul who spent her career in healthcare. In 2010, her life intersected with her neighbor, Robert Propp, a man she initially viewed as a mature and steady influence. However, as their relationship progressed and they moved in together, the facade of stability began to crack. Propp's behavior became increasingly erratic, marked by drug abuse, long unexplained absences, and controlling tendencies. Despite these challenges, Missy displayed immense courage, finally ending the toxic relationship in March 2016 and moving in with her sister, Angie, to build a safer, happier future for herself and her daughter. Tragically, her hope for a fresh start was cut short on the morning of July 6, 2016. Robert Propp contacted the police, claiming he arrived at Missy's home to check on her only to find her unresponsive after being forced to break down the back door. When law enforcement arrived at the scene, they discovered a room in disarray, suggesting a violent struggle had taken place. Propp, who bore fresh injuries including a black eye, attempted to deflect suspicion by claiming he had been involved in a bar fight the night before. However, detectives quickly dismantled this fabrication by reviewing surveillance footage from the bar, which showed no such incident occurred. The subsequent autopsy confirmed that Missy had died from neck compression, and her death was officially ruled a homicide by strangulation. During his 2018 trial, Propp attempted a final, defamatory defense by claiming the death resulted from a consensual sexual encounter, a narrative that was soundly rejected by the testimony of Missy's friends and family. Prosecutors presented a chilling case of a controlling, obsessed ex-partner who murdered Missy because he could no longer dominate her life. The jury found Robert Propp guilty of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. While justice was ultimately served, Missy's family remains forever heartbroken by the loss of a beloved mother, sister, and friend whose future was stolen at such a young age. The life of Melissa Missy Thornton, a young mother and dedicated healthcare provider from Montrose, Michigan, was defined by her nurturing spirit, her close-knit family, and her enduring friendship with her best friend, Mary. In July 2010, Missy met Robert Propp, a neighbor and father of two, during a backyard barbecue. What began as an attraction to his apparent maturity and stability soon evolved into a 5-year relationship. However, as the years passed, the cracks in their life together began to show. Prop became increasingly distant, often disappearing for days at a time, and his behavior became erratic and controlling. Even after the birth of their daughter, B, in 2014, the family dynamic remained strained. The situation reached a breaking point in late 2015 when Missy discovered that Prop had been struggling with a serious drug addiction, a revelation that shattered her trust. Despite his promises to seek help, Prop's behavior did not change, and in March 2016, Missy made the courageous decision to leave him, moving out with her daughter to live with her sister, Angie. Free from the volatility of her past relationship, Missy began to reclaim her happiness, focusing on her studies and her role as a mother. Tragically, this newfound freedom was cut short. On July 5, 2016, after a night out with her sister, Missy was seen with Prop at a bar. Hours later, on the morning of July 6th, Prop called 911, claiming he had arrived at Missy's home to find a forced entry and discovered her unresponsive. When police arrived, they found Missy deceased and Prop feigning grief, complete with a fresh black, i.e. claimed to have received in a bar fight. The investigation quickly dismantled his story. Surveillance footage from the bar showed no signs of an altercation, and the autopsy results confirmed that Missy had been murdered by manual strangulation. Investigators concluded that Prop had followed Missy home, killed her, and then staged a break-in to cover his tracks. During his 2018 trial, Prop attempted a final, desperate act of malice by claiming the death was the result of consensual sexual activity, a defense that was soundly rejected by the court after testimony from those who knew Missy's true character. Robert Prop was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, while his conviction provided a measure of justice. Missy's death left a permanent void in the lives of her daughter, her family, and her friends, who continue to honor her memory today. Melissa Missy Thornton was a vibrant, family-oriented young woman from Montrose, Michigan, whose life was defined by her deep connections to her mother, her sisters Angie and Stephanie, and her best friend Mary. Known for her big brown eyes and nurturing spirit, Missy eventually moved to Saginaw to be closer to her sisters and pursue a career in home health care. In July 2010, at a backyard barbecue, she met Robert Prop, a neighbor and father too. Despite an age gap, Missy was drawn to his perceived maturity and stability, and the two eventually moved in together. They welcomed a daughter named B in 2014, but behind closed doors, their relationship was fracturing. Robert became increasingly controlling, struggled with cocaine addiction, and frequently abandoned his responsibilities to the family. The tension reached a breaking point by Christmas 2015, when Missy discovered Robert's drug use. Although she initially tried to hold the family together for her daughter's sake, she finally left him in March 2016, moving in with her sister Angie to start a new, independent chapter of her life. Missy began nursing school and was finally finding happiness and freedom. However, on July 5, 2016, during a night out with her sister, Missy encountered Robert at a bar. He followed the sisters home afterward. The next morning, Robert placed a frantic 911 call, claiming he found Missy unresponsive in her bed after forcing entry into the home with a crowbar. When police arrived, they found Missy deceased and signs of a violent struggle within the room. While Robert claimed his fresh black eye was the result of a bar fight, surveillance footage from the night before proved he was lying. An autopsy revealed that Missy had been murdered by strangulation. During his 2018 trial, Robert attempted to shift the blame by making degrading claims about Missy, but the prosecution successfully dismantled his story. The jury found Robert Prop guilty of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, while the verdict provided a sense of justice for Missy's grieving family. Her death remains a heartbreaking loss of devoted mother, sister, and friend. The story begins with the life of Melissa Missy Thornton, a vibrant young woman from Montrose, Michigan, who was a devoted daughter, sister, and best friend. In 2010, she met Robert Prop, a neighbor who had recently moved back in with his parents following a divorce. Despite initial concerns from her family regarding their age gap, Missy was drawn to his perceived maturity and stability. The couple eventually moved in together, and in 2014, they welcomed their daughter, B, into the world. However, behind the facade of a happy blended family, cracks began to form. As Missy pursued nursing school to build a better future for herself and her daughter, Prop became increasingly controlling and resentful. His behavior grew more erratic, and he struggled with substance abuse, often neglecting his responsibilities to the family. By December 2015, Missy discovered Prop was using cocaine, and the following March, she finally ended the relationship, moving herself and B into her sister Angie's home to seek a fresh start. On the night of July 5, 2016, Missy and her sister Angie enjoyed a night out in an attempt to celebrate Missy's newfound freedom. During the evening, Prop encountered them and insisted on joining them. Later that night, after they returned to home where Missy was staying, Prop followed them and eventually remained with Missy. The next morning, on July 6, Prop called 911, claiming he had arrived at the house, found the back door forced open, and discovered Missy unresponsive in her bed. He feigned an attempt to perform CPR when police arrived, but responding officers immediately noted that Missy had been dead for some time. Investigators quickly grew suspicious of Prop's account. He claimed the bruising on his face was a result of a bar fight, but security footage from the establishment they visited that night showed no such altercation. Furthermore, the crime scene, featuring a broken lamp and signs of struggle, contradicted his story. An autopsy soon revealed the truth. Missy had been murdered by manual strangulation. During his 2018 trial, Prop attempted a defense that backfired significantly. He claimed Missy's death occurred during consensual sexual activity involving strangulation, an assertion her family and former partners vehemently refuted as inconsistent with her character. The jury ultimately rejected his story, finding him guilty of first-degree murder. Robert Prop was sentenced to life in prison, without the possibility of parole. While the verdict provided justice, it remained a heartbreaking loss for Missy's family, who remember her as a loving mother and sister whose bright future was stolen from her. The story begins with a girl next door who caught the eye of an eligible stranger. She was instantly attracted to him and fell madly in love, but as their family grew, a dark secret threatened to break them. By October 2015 in Montrose, Michigan, bride-to-be Mary Hinkle was feeling jittery, but her best friend and maid of honor, 24-year-old Melissa Missy Thornton, was there to ensure everything went off without a hitch. Missy, the youngest of 3 Thornton sisters, had always been close to her family, and her bond with Mary was equally unbreakable. After moving to Saginaw to be near her sisters and pursuing a career in home health care, Missy found stability and eventually entered a long-term relationship with her neighbor, Robert Prop. They met in 2010 when Robert, a divorced father, moved in next door. Though Missy was initially drawn to his apparent maturity and work ethic, cracks in the relationship began to show after they moved in together. Robert became increasingly distant, often disappearing for days at a time and neglecting his responsibilities. The tension escalated when Missy became pregnant with their daughter, B, in 2014, and grew further when she enrolled in nursing school, a goal Robert seemed to resent. By Christmas 2015, Missy discovered Robert's secret. He had been struggling with a severe drug addiction. Despite his empty promises of change, the relationship became untenable, and in March 2016, Missy finally left him, moving in with her sister Angie to start a new, independent life. Missy began to thrive as a single mother, finally feeling happy and free. However, on July 5, 2016, after a night out with her sister, she encountered Robert again. While they returned home to Angie's house, Robert eventually followed them. The next morning, on July 6, the Saginaw Police Department received an erratic 911 call from Robert. He claimed he had found the back door of Missy's home forced open and discovered her unresponsive in bed. First responders arrived to find Missy deceased. and it was immediately apparent that she had been dead for some time. Police quickly treated the scene as a homicide, while Robert attempted to frame the death as the result of a home invasion. Detectives noted his suspicious behavior and fresh injuries. Robert claimed he received a black eye in a bar fight, but security footage from a night prior proved he was lying. An autopsy soon revealed the truth. Missy had been strangled to death. Charged with first-degree murder, Robert Propp went to trial in 2018. On the stand, he attempted to smear Missy's character by claiming the death occurred during consensual sexual activity, a narrative the prosecution and Missy's loved ones easily dismantled. The jury found Robert guilty of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. While his conviction brought a measure of justice, Missy's family remained forever heartbroken, left to navigate life without the devoted mother, sister, and friend who was stolen from them. The story of Melissa "Missy" Thornton is a deeply tragic account of a vibrant young woman whose life was cut short by the actions of her former partner. Missy, a beloved daughter, sister, and mother, first met Robert Propp in July 2010. Initially drawn to his perceived stability and maturity, she moved in with him, and the couple eventually had a daughter together named B. However, beneath the surface of their blended family, the relationship was marred by Robert's increasing absence, his struggle with substance abuse, and his controlling behavior. As Missy began to pursue her own goals, enrolling in nursing school and striving for a better future for herself and her daughter, the cracks in the relationship widened. Following a distressing incident during a family Christmas gathering in 2015, where Robert was discovered using drugs, Missy finally made the courageous decision to leave him in March 2016, moving in with her sister Angie to start anew. Tragically, her efforts to move on were met with obsession and violence. On July 5, 2016, after a night out with her sister, Missy encountered Robert, who later followed the sisters home. The following morning, Robert contacted 911, feigning discovery of a break-in and claiming to have found Missy unresponsive. First responders and investigators, however, quickly identified inconsistencies in his story, including visible injuries on Robert that he falsely attributed to a bar fight. An autopsy revealed that Missy had been murdered by strangulation. During his 2018 trial, Robert attempted to deflect blame by disparaging Missy's character, but the prosecution successfully dismantled his narrative, presenting evidence of his controlling nature and premeditated violence. The jury ultimately found Robert Propp guilty of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Missy is remembered today by her family as a devoted mother and a cherished soul, while her story serves as a somber reminder of the dangers of domestic abuse and the tragic consequences of coercive control. This is the tragic story of Melissa "Missy" Thornton, a young mother whose life was cut short by her former partner, Robert Propp. Missy was a vibrant, nurturing woman deeply cherished by her parents, her two older sisters, Angie and Stephanie, and her lifelong best friend, Mary, a devoted mother to her daughter, B. Missy was actively building a promising future for them both through her studies in nursing. She met Robert Propp in 2010 when he moved in next door. Initially, Missy was drawn to his apparent maturity and the stability of his life as a business owner and father. However, the relationship soon began to fracture under the weight of Propp's hidden drug addiction and increasingly controlling behavior. As the years passed, Missy's family noticed a troubling pattern. Propp became unsupportive of her aspirations, and his long absences caused significant distress. The situation reached a breaking point in late 2015 when Missy discovered Propp was using cocaine, despite his empty promises to change. Missy finally chose to prioritize her safety and her daughter's well-being by ending the relationship in March 2016 and moving in with her sister, Angie. Tragically, just months later, on July 6, 2016, Missy's life was taken. Propp called 911 that morning, claiming he had arrived at her home to find signs of a break-in and discovered Missy unresponsive in her bed. When police arrived, they quickly identified serious inconsistencies in his story. The crime scene showed clear signs of violent struggle, and Prop himself bore fresh bruising, including a black eye, which he falsely attributed to a bar fight. Subsequent investigations into surveillance footage from the bar they had visited confirmed he was lying, as there had been no altercation. An autopsy later revealed that Missy had died from manual strangulation, and the manner of death was ruled a homicide. Prop was promptly arrested and charged with her murder during his 2018 trial. He attempted a defense that sought to blame Missy for her own death by claiming the incident occurred during a consensual sexual encounter, a narrative that Missy's family and friends vehemently rejected as an attempt to degrade her character. The jury ultimately saw through his lies and found him guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, while the verdict brought a measure of justice. It could never replace the woman whose presence left an indelible mark on her family, leaving behind a young daughter and grieving loved ones who miss her every day. The story of Melissa "Missy" Thornton is a heartbreaking account of a vibrant young woman whose life was stolen by an abusive partner just as she was building a bright, independent future. Born in 1991, Missy was the youngest of 3 sisters and deeply connected to her family. Her life changed in 2010 when she met her neighbor, Robert Prop, an older man whom she initially perceived as a mature and steady father figure. For a while, they appeared to be a happy couple, eventually moving in together and welcoming their daughter, B, in 2014. However, the facade of a perfect life masked a growing darkness. As Missy pursued her nursing education and sought to improve her life, Robert became increasingly controlling, neglectful, and erratic. The situation reached a breaking point in late 2015 when Missy discovered Robert was struggling with a serious drug addiction. Despite his promises to change, his behavior only worsened. In March 2016, Missy made the courageous decision to leave him, moving in with her sister, Angie, to prioritize the safety and well-being of her daughter. She began to thrive as a single mother, reclaiming her independence and happiness. Tragically, this newfound freedom was cut short. On the night of July 5, 2016, after a night out with her sister, Missy encountered Robert, who followed her home. The following morning, Robert contacted 911, claiming he had arrived at her home to find a forced entry and discovered Missy unresponsive. First responders and investigators quickly realized the scene was staged. There was no evidence of an actual break-in, and Robert's claim that he had sustained injuries in a bar fight was debunked by security footage from the night before. An autopsy determined that Missy had been murdered by manual strangulation during his 2018 trial. Robert attempted to deflect blame by concocting a disparaging story about consensual sexual activity, a claim that was soundly rejected by both the prosecution and those who knew Missy best. The jury ultimately found him guilty of first-degree murder. Robert Prop was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring he would never harm another person again, while the verdict provided a measure of justice for the Thornton family. The loss of Missy remains a profound and painful void for all who loved her. Melissa "Missy" Thornton was the kind of person who defined the atmosphere of a room. As the youngest of 3 sisters and a devoted friend, she was known for her infectious laughter, her warmth, and her unwavering dedication to the people she loved. Whether she was working as a healthcare provider or helping her best friend, Mary, navigate the chaos of her wedding day, Missy moved through the world with an open heart. But behind the scenes of her family-oriented life, a dark and calculated shadow was growing. Her story took a fateful turn in July 2010 during a backyard birthday party in Montrose, Michigan. It was there that Missy met Robert Prop, a man living next door who seemed, at first glance, to be the perfect catch. He was older, appeared to be a stable father, and showed a level of maturity that intrigued the 19-year-old Missy. Though her family noticed the age gap, they wanted to see her happy. Missy, convinced she had found a partner for life, fell deeply in love. By 2000,